Congratulations are in order for our wonderful Democratic victories on the 2022 election. This is our celebratory cake, which will have our honored guest, Jerry McNerney, slice for us. Okay, good. Okay, good. This is the start of the official Tri-Valley Democratic Club November meeting, and we are thankful, with Thanksgiving in 3 days, for a number of things. And one of them is we are thankful for all of the hardworking Democrats that allowed us to have a successful midterm election that kept away the red wave, turned it into a pink trickle. Let's do a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Someday. All right. Very good. Okay. Past president and current political director Ellis Goldberg will introduce our honored guest, Ellis.
You hang on to this thing?
For many of us, our political careers started right in this building. And they started because of our honored guest, who had the gumption to stand up to a 7-term Republican congressman, didn't have the support of the Democratic Party, who were fearful of that Republican congressman. And he came to this club and asked for our support. And we gave it to him. And we were able to slay that dragon in 2006. In 2005, Jerry McNerney was our vice president. In 2006, he won the election. In 2007, he became a member of the Congress of the United States. We couldn't be prouder. Mr. Speaker, my good friend, Jerry McNerney.
Well, good evening, everyone. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to be back here in the place that I got started. Greg, who did all the decorating?
Retirees came in.
Retirees, good. It's kind of nice of them coming here. Yeah, Ellis talked about this a little bit earlier, but in 2004, my son called. He was in the service and said, "Dad, I just got my absentee ballot in the mail. There's no one running against the incumbent. What are you doing with yourself, Dad? I'm serving my country. You need to get out there." Of course, I didn't take it seriously because I was an engineer. I hadn't done a whole lot of politics, but he kept pressuring me, and so I pulled papers. It was a write-in candidacy at that point, but you know, I didn't have any connections. I went to the Alameda County Democratic Party website and said, "Hey, I want to run against Richard Pombo," and things started happening. I mean, people started calling me. Volunteers got a hold of me. People in San Joaquin County, which was part of the district, asked me to walk precincts with them. I mean, it started roller coastering. It started rolling. Of course, 2004 it wasn't a really good year. It was a bad year for Democrats, really. But we worked hard. We made the ballot as a write-in candidate, so I was the Democratic nominee in 2004. We wanted to lose to Richard Pombo without any party support. In 2006, I ran again. I learned a lot. Big support from the Tri-Valley Dems and the IBW. Upstairs, we had a lot of people coming in and out. It was the only race in the whole state that was really competitive. So my opponent was the most anti-environmental member of Congress. So the Bay Area came out for me. Rahm Emanuel told me to get out of the race because he had his own candidate. I said, so he called my consultants and said, if you work for Jerry, you're done for in Washington. And so all my consultants left. We got some guys from Tennessee. They did a great job. I wanted to win that race, and Ron Emanuel loved me. I told Michelle I won, and he loved that. So that was a heck of an experience. But it's really been truly an honor and a privilege to serve these last 16 years. Starting here in what is District 13, I think, or District 11 back. It had Pleasanton, Dublin, San Ramon, and Danville, but not Livermore. And then San Joaquin County and a little bit of Morgan Hill. It had some of the most conservative towns in each one of those counties. And in 2010, we had a Republican wave. We geared up. We worked hard. We knocked on 200,000 doors in that campaign. And there was an IBEW gentleman who was a libertarian who ran in that race. He got 5% of the vote. I got 48%, and the Republican got 47%. So I won a tough race, and the Republican wave that took out 63 Democratic members of Congress stopped here at this district. So it was a heck of an experience. But I'm really proud of the work we've been able to do in Congress. Starting with Pelosi Care, back some people call it Obamacare, but if you were there seeing how Pelosi carried the water on that, that's what you'd be calling it these days. We passed a cap and trade bill to limit carbon reductions. The Senate didn't take it up. That cost about 10 or 15 of my colleagues their jobs. But we went on to deal with other issues. I put a lot of work in and got a Tri-Valley Democratic, a Veterans Hospital being built over there in San Joaquin County. That was one of my proudest accomplishments. My son again, Michael, said, Dad, one of the things you're going to be most proud of when you leave office is what you did for veterans. And he's right. Having done that for veterans and stood up for veterans all along the way, whether they're getting disability benefits or getting trouble at the hospital or just dealing with the Veterans Administration, we really helped out a lot of those veterans. And it's one of the most satisfying things I was able to do in Congress. This last 2 years, we had a raise-within majority in the Senate and the House, and we got more done in these last 2 years than any Congress that I can think of for American history. I mean, we passed the American Rescue Plan, which included a child tax credit, which eliminated poverty for 50% of the children living in poverty in this country. We did the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, the first major climate bill passed in this country. So we had a tremendous record of achievements, and nobody's going to be able to take that away from us. It's been a very exciting time. One of the more difficult periods is after the 2010 census. The districts were the Tri-Valley, which now Eric Swalwell holds, in San Joaquin County, and the Democratic Party asked me to not run against an incumbent, so a Democrat, so I ran out in the Valley, and it's been it's a good district to represent. It's a district that could use a good leader, and so we've been able to provide that leadership out there. It's been rewarding, so I appreciate that, but also, now that I'm stepping down, getting my feet back in the Tri-Valley is a real pleasure, so I appreciate that. One of my big issues over the years has been campaign finance reform, and that is an issue upon which many other issues rest. If you care about gun violence, if you care about climate, if you care about just about any big issue, healthcare, if you care about any big issue, the money in campaigns on the Republican side is keeping us from moving forward. On the gun issue, for example, the gun lobby is putting so much money out there that no Republican can withstand a primary challenge if they stand up to to eliminate gun violence. We weren't even able to pass a bill that would look into research on how to reduce gun violence. They wouldn't even let us get money out for that. So that's a big issue that I've cared a lot about. Water, another big issue I've worked very hard on over the years. And tech issues, energy policy, climate change, artificial intelligence, all these issues are so exciting to work on, and issues that I think are very impactful for our nation and our future. So those are some of the things I want to talk about. I think it'd be more fun to answer questions than for me to just blab on for a long while. So please raise your hands and don't feel shy. I'll try to answer your questions as best I can. Mary.
I can see that you're passionate about campaign finance reform, and do you have thoughts as to how to address the issue?
Well, I think one of the things that makes it so hard is that the Supreme Court seems to be willing to overturn reasonable campaign finance reform law. We can pass it in the House and the Senate, and there have been good laws that have been passed. McCain-Feingold, I think, was a pretty good one. But the Supreme Court basically overturned all that, opened up the Roberts Supreme Court, Roberts Court, reached down and grabbed the Citizens United case and brought it up to the Supreme Court rather than let it come up on its own. So they were an activist Supreme Court and determined to eliminate any kind of restraints on campaign funding and spending and campaign financing. And so we almost have to move to a constitutional amendment. Now, my good friend and colleague, John Sarbanes, has a voucher system proposal. It makes sense, but it's kind of complicated. I think it would work, but in order to get something like that passed, you have to have people to get behind it. It would, I think, give you, if you agreed to not take certain kind of money, you would get a 6-to-1 voucher on how much money you raise. If you raised $100, you get $600 matching money, but so far it hasn't really moved. I think that that's a system that might work instead of limiting, you're actually it's the carrot rather than the stick. That might work. I proposed a constitutional amendment every single Congress that would eliminate PACs and super PACs and just allow money to be donated to campaigns from individuals, from people, and not allow more money from a district to come from outside of a district to come from people that you would be able to vote for you. So that would be, I think, a big achievement, and limit the amount of money that you could self-finance too, a big one. I didn't get a whole lot of support on that, but I think that I've got people back in Washington that are going to be moving forward on that as we move forward. A couple things recently I'm very excited about. I proposed House Resolution 1009, which, if you understand your history, it's based on the just war theory. Just war theory was first described by Cicero and maybe even Aristotle, and over the period of years, Thomas Aquinas and other religious scholars got behind this. There's 6 principles that morally justify a country to go to war. The House of Representatives, it's our responsibility in the Constitution to declare war or to authorize military force. It's the House of Representatives' responsibility in the Constitution to do that, and yet there's no structure for us to have that debate. So my resolution would have the House of Representatives debate those 6 principles before declaring war or authorizing military force. Unfortunately, not a single Republican can sign on to that, and that's not a surprise. The chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, where this would originate, won't take it to the committee unless there's a bipartisan consensus. So, but I have outside organizations like the Catholic bishops are behind this, so I think we can get some Republicans on board. Next year, Barbara Lee's going to take this up for me next year. So that's something I'm pretty excited about. Another thing I'd like to see move forward is the privacy for this country. The Energy and Commerce Committee that I'm a part of has a privacy bill, but California has its own privacy law, and that privacy law is a good one. The House of Representatives, the Energy and Commerce Committee's law, it's really a good one too, but there's not complete overlap. So the Speaker, Pelosi, felt like if she brought that to the House floor and made us vote on that House Democratic members from California would be put in a difficult position before the election by saying that, by allowing their opponents to say that they voted to reduce your privacy protection. So, which wouldn't be true, in my opinion, but nonetheless, this is politics. It's not always based on truth. So that one didn't move forward, but I think we're in a good position this year, in the next Congress to move forward on the privacy legislation. I'd also like to see legislation on artificial intelligence, something I was the chairman of the Artificial Intelligence Caucus. Basically, Europe has a pretty good AI regulatory plan. It's not implemented yet, but it's based on the risk to the society that the different types of AI would represent to the people. And the higher risk ones are the most restricted, and the lowest risk ones are unrestricted. So it's a good plan. I wouldn't mind seeing something like that take place here. So I think I've spoken too long.
That was a wonderful answer.
Thank you.
Insider details.
Yeah. All right. Joy.
So, with the most current farm bill, do you think it's possible that most of the funds might go to small farmers and ranchers rather than to the big commercial enterprises?
Again, campaign finance reform. I think it's moving that direction. I mean, it's glacial. When I first got elected, we were talking about, okay, we're gonna move some of that subsidies from the big farms to the little farms, and it's happened, but it's gradual, it's moving slowly. Most of what I have been supportive of in the Farm Bill is research to make agriculture more productive, to how to use, to fight pests without using chemicals and so on. The research, I think, is very, very important, and I've been very supportive of that. Especially in California, we have what we call specialty crops, the almonds and the strawberries and that kind of stuff, as opposed to the row crops like wheat and soybeans that they grow in the rest of the country. So we need our own special focus on research, and that's being done by the Farm Bill. But the Farm Bill is moving in the right direction, but it's going to take a generation or so to really weed that stuff out. And the farm, the big farm campaign finance, they're going to be using their money to convince legislators that their subsidies are important to feed America or to feed Ukraine or whatever they're going to say. And the thing is, people rail about lobbyists, and it's not the lobbyists. It's lobbyists will bring in clients, and they'll educate you. I mean, they'll inform you about a position that you don't know much about. In my case, I didn't know about agriculture or banks or that stuff. So, I mean, I get the lobbyists on one side of the issue and the other. So I get on the other side of an issue, and I get informed, and that's useful. The problem is the way campaign financing. I keep coming back to this. I mean, the way campaign financing works. Now, suppose you have to raise a couple $1 million for an election. You have to raise it in $2,000 chunks or $3,000 chunks, and so somebody gives you $2,000, $2,500. A month later they call your office, and you're going to take the call. That's all there is to it, and you're going to listen to them, and you're going to be biased by that conversation. Somebody donates $5 or $10 online. That's great. They call your office. They'll talk to an intern. You will never hear about it. I mean, that's just the way money works. So we need to do something about that, and that's part of the problem is our country. Not only that, but it takes people away from the business of legislating and puts them in the call room, and you're sitting there making calls all day, which is very distasteful in my opinion. But it's what you have to do. So that, and there's a lot of problems with some of this money comes from you don't know where. You know where it comes from. You get a PAC that'll give you $10,000, and you assume it's legit and they've got their tracks covered, but it could come from Vladimir or some other person. You just don't know where it's coming from. Or Xi, sure.
In terms of the public financing of campaigns, Is there any hope that we will eventually get a fully financed public, federal campaigns, or are we moving any in that direction? Much of Europe is public financed, including the television, the government channels. Here we have C-SPAN 1 and 2. We could probably put commercials for free on those channels. Is there any hope of moving in that direction soon?
I mean, there's always hope. Is it really gonna happen? That was a part of my proposed constitutional amendment. Well, I get excited and I speak quickly and I slur. The part of the proposal was that, you know, it has to, you can only take contributions from individuals, you can only take as much money from outside your district as you inside your district. Nobody can self-fund over 10 times the individual amount, but except for public financing. And I think a lot of people feel that that would be a good idea, but getting people behind it is tough because they just see that as like, it's a non-starter. Why would I put my name on something? It's not going anywhere. And so, I mean, I had like 3 Republicans on my campaign finance reform constitutional amendment. 2 of them are dead now, so it's not going anywhere.
It's a shame.
Yeah, it is, and it's hurt hitting our country.
That's the solution in Europe, widespread.
I mean, it's not the only problem.
Canada.
I mean, it's not the only fatal problem we're having. It's you know, mortal injury is that, and you know, this the way the media has gone after the fairness doctrine was eliminated during the Reagan years. You know, with Fox News and all those. I mean, Murdoch and those guys, they've ruined England. They've destroyed that country.
Absolutely.
Brexit, and they allow Putin to come in and influence their campaigns. And now the conservatives in this country are trying to do the same thing here. So it's a problem. Yeah, I'm back. Ellis, did I just skip over you?
You sort of touched on this. There's something called HJR 1, which is the constitutional amendment that said corporations are not people and money is not speech. And I'm wondering, is that the constitutional amendment you've been talking about?
No. The constitutional amendment is a high bar.
Yeah.
Right, you gotta get 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate. You gotta get 3/4 of the state constitutions to pass this thing. So why make a constitutional amendment that's weak? Put something out there strong. You know, if you say, okay, corporations are not people, corporations can't, well, that puts us back to where we were in 2014, which is already pretty bad. So no, I would support it, but I think we need something a lot stronger. If you're gonna go all the way, a constitutional amendment, let's put something there that has teeth in it. It goes all the way. Yeah.
So I want to ask, so you've worked on I assume you worked on the bill, I can't remember the acronym.
Build Back Better?
Yeah. So I guess a concern, for some people is, what do you see coming down the road in terms of actually trying more past that, in terms of economics?
Well, Build Back Better and the Inflation Reduction Act, great legislation to create an infrastructure in this country. And there's a lot there that's happening, and it's going to make a big difference. It's making a big difference. In terms of new infrastructure spending, not with Kevin McCarthy in charge, sorry, or whoever they put up, doesn't matter. Yeah, it's going to be, but I mean, the silver lining here is that these guys are complete incompetents. You know, they have no direction, they have no plan, they have no way of legislating, they don't know how to govern. So 2 years of them in charge is going to show the country what nincompoops they are. And it'll also help prevent the re-election of Blondie. So as painful as it's going to be watching Kevin, I tell you, when that guy speaks, I get a stomach ache. But it'll be you know, we'll see what happens. I think the outcome will be in 24. We'll take back the House, we'll take the Senate, and we'll get a Democratic president.
Here.
That's my
Yeah.
projection. Yeah.
You know, everybody knows the big lie. There's also the big misconception, and it was really brought out this last election, where all polls show that they trust Republicans to handle the economy over Democrats.
Yeah.
And if there's ever the biggest crockett crap in history, that's it. Something like 10 out of the last 11 recessions have been under Republican presidents. Newt Gingrich is happy to take full credit for balancing the budget when it was Clinton's tax increase that did it.
Oh, yeah.
In all these, we've got to do something to change that, because people really believe it, and it blows me away.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When Obama was president, he talked about this. He says, you know, the Republicans are gonna take us into the ditch, and the Democrats are gonna have to pull us out. And that's the history, every single time. Republicans, starting with Hoover, maybe before Hoover, putting us in the ditch, and then having the Democrats work hard and get us back on track and get into a good, strong economy, and then the Republicans take over again. I mean, that's our history.
You Republicans always like to call the Democrat Party, which drives me crazy. But there's the other one. We should go back to calling the Great Depression what it was originally called, the Great Republican Depression.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
It was
Well,
known as the Great
I mean,
Republican Depression.
They want to deregulate everything, including the financial system. They want to lower taxes to the wealthy people, and of course, the economy's going to look good for a little while. It's like a shot of heroin or something.
Right.
And then you come down, you crash. Yeah, that's their secret.
So how do you push back against that?
Yeah, just it's a democratic system. Yes, Mary.
Well, bouncing off of what he just said, how do you push back against that? I've been very interested in messaging. Is there a way Democrats can improve their messaging to counter things like that?
That's one of our devils. I mean, yeah, there's in the House, the Senate probably has the same thing. There's a group of 4 people that's their job to develop the Democratic message, and Nancy would read out every week and but I don't know. I mean, my personal thing, I want to focus on policy. I want to tell people, hey, here's the challenges, here's when you do, and people are like, well, yeah, that's good, but I want something that's going to talk to the back of my head, not to the front of my head. So that's why the Republicans are so good, because they talk to this part of your body. They talk to that part of your head. And that's just one of the unfairnesses of life, really. Yes, Ewan, thank you. And City Council Member.
Thank you. So there seems to be a problem at all levels of government, that we lurch from emergency to emergency, and we know some of the major problems coming up. Like, as just one example, since you're interested in AI, there's going to be a transportation employment crisis when self-driving cars really improve. And we can see the problem, we know the problem's coming, but the attention and time of legislatures is so focused on immediate, important, and disastrous things. How do we move from legislating for next year into actually legislating for 10 to 20 years from now?
I mean, that's a great question. And the thing is, you're right, legislators can't move that quickly. And not only that, but the kind of expertise that you need to deal with transportation or with the future work with regard to AI or the water crisis that we're running into, that very few people in Congress have the expertise to really do that. So what you want to do is legislate in a general sense and empower, to authorize agencies, and then the agencies are populated by people that are experts, and they have the power to move forward very aggressively and very specifically on these issues. So the Department of Transportation, for example, it's an administrative agency, but they have experts that can do this. Now, Pete Buttigieg is great. He doesn't know squat about transportation, but he's got a lot of really good people working for him, and he can empower them to do what they need to do. So, he's probably learned a lot by now, but he didn't when he took office. And the same thing with Javier Becerra. He's a great man, good friend, didn't know squat about healthcare, but he's got a lot of really good people working for him. And it's those agencies like specifically the ones I've worked with are the Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Communication Commission, and they have to have the power and the resources to develop regulations that move these issues forward. That's basically how we do it. That's how we're doing it. Yes, City Councilwoman.
You've twice mentioned water, that you were proud of the work that you've done on water, and you just mentioned the water crisis. Water is a real significant local issue. I'm wondering if we're looking at it in the same context. Locally, we're both in quantity and quality. And so when you're talking about the water crisis, are you talking about the drought, or are you talking about the toxic forever chemicals, PFAS, that we're so concerned about?
Yeah, PFAS is a concern, but I'm concerned about the availability of water, basically, the drought. I mean, have you driven up to Shasta Lake recently? I mean, there's islands there you haven't seen before. I mean, it's serious. I have legislation, it was a very sort of comprehensive water legislation that would do recycling and reuse and rainwater capture and desal, the whole bit. And, you know, it was just too big. It was probably, most offices can put out maybe a 10 or 15 page legislation. This was 150 pages. And so when you ask a member for support, and this is kind of inside baseball, if you ask a member for support on legislation, they'll take it back to their office, and if it's 150 pages, their staff doesn't have the resource to do that, to go over that. So you don't get the kind of support you need. That kind of legislation has to come out of committee, because then you have a lot of staff, and then the committee can get members behind it through their hearings and you know, things that committees, the markups that you do. The members are on, that's their field of expertise. Energy and Commerce, we had some jurisdiction on water issues. The other was the Natural Resources Committee. So if it comes to committee, then it gets more traction. Same with privacy, by the way, and because that's a big, complicated issue. But what happened was that the committees took little parts of my legislation that was in their field jurisdiction and then put those forward. So a lot of what I proposed didn't come through in a single bill, but it's coming through in individual parts. You know, funding for desal research and all this stuff is happening, but it didn't happen as a result of one big piece of legislation. And just another little bit of insider thing. One of the big issues in Washington is jurisdiction. I mean, you got what, 14 committees in the House, I think, or something like that, and each one is very protective of its field of jurisdiction. So, you know, our committee had healthcare, but we didn't have tax policy. Tax policy is Ways and Means. So, the healthcare legislation had tax parts, and it had you know, healthcare parts, it had all different parts, and so that piece of legislation had to be approved by several committees, which makes it much more difficult to get this stuff done. You know, if you want to get stuff done, you try to keep it within your own committee's jurisdiction. Some of the biggest fights within the Democratic Party and within the Republican Party are which committee gets what piece of legislation, where the jurisdiction lies. So that's one of the big issues in Washington, is who gets to do what. It's a big driver.
So are you talking about PFAS up there?
Oh yeah, we've had hearings on PFAS, absolutely. There's legislation to try and get the PFAS out of the system. I mean, you had the fire retardants and all had PFAS, your non-stick frying pans and all that stuff. I mean, there's PFAS pretty much everywhere.
Yes.
And so everybody has it in their bodies now. So how do we limit that? How do we keep it? I mean, it's a forever chemical, as you know. Sure. How do you get it out of the water when it's in there? Yeah, that's a big issue. Yeah, no doubt about it.
We definitely need some funding to cleanse the water, because there's such a significant volume of PFAS in our local water system.
Where does it come from locally?
I'm sorry?
Where does it come from locally?
Where does it come
What's
from?
the source of it? Is it fire stations or?
Nobody, everybody's
knows.
pointing a finger, right?
Okay.
And so we don't actually have confirmation, but yes, there are assumptions that a lot of it is the fire retardant, but like you said, it's on our McDonald's wrappers.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
on
exactly.
our children's warm and fuzzy jammies, and
Yeah.
it needs to be, you know, we thought that it had been made illegal, but they just changed the name and it's still being produced. And
Well, I mean, there's so many different kinds of PFAS. It's hard to ban all of them at once. I mean, there's a theory of chemical trespass. I mean, there's so many chemicals out there, and they're regulating maybe 100 chemicals, and there's like 100,000 chemicals that we just don't know what the effects are. and we've talked about this in committee many times, trying to figure out, there was a bill that passed out of committee, the environmental subcommittee, and then the committee, and then the House. It was a pretty good one, had bipartisan support. I forget the name of it now, but, you know, and it does take into account those things, but how do you regulate, you know, 100,000 chemicals? You know, it's just, I think there should be a buy-in, an opt-in instead of an opt-out. You know, I mean, you should have to get permission to make a chemical and put it in the commercial world before you can use it, and that has to be verified that it's safe. But verifying a chemical safe is a huge challenge. It's not, you know, we depend on these chemicals. So it's like you're asking about the farm subsidies. It's gonna take time, and it's kind of gets ahead of us because these companies can develop new chemicals faster than we can regulate them. So, yeah.
Pleasanton just had to shut down our last 2 wells
Oh.
because of PFAS. So when you're talking about a lack of water, and then the water we do have has toxic chemicals in it, so we have to close our wells and have less water available.
Well,
We
this may
need
not
help.
make you feel better, but the things in China are a lot worse, a lot worse. Sorry. Joey, one last question, Joey.
So given that a lot of people think when they're gonna be taking an exam, that the way to do it is to cram at the last minute, how do we get policy makers to get away from the idea that we're going to accomplish this by 2030, by 2050, and then the people who could do something all decide they'll wait till 2029 and 2049 before they do anything? How do we get policymakers to make things happen now instead of putting it off with these distant deadlines?
Well, a few things that really get to policymakers is jobs in your district. Campaign money is another big one. People protesting outside your office is a big one. You know, there's things that get to policymakers that are effective. Writing letters, calling, no effect. So putting people in front of somebody's office and having the news there, you know, reporting that to the Bay Area, that, hey, there's somebody outside McNerney's office, you know, what's this about? You better get his act together, you know, I mean, that's an effective way to.
So where is your office now?
You'll have trouble finding it. So, at any rate, it's just been an honor. I want to thank the Tri-Valley Dems for their support over the years. I want to be involved. I mean, I just, one last thing, you know, the state senate, the new state senate district has the Tri-Valley and San Joaquin County in a single district. It's about 1 million people. So you're going to be seeing some candidates from San Joaquin County out here.
Congressman Jerry McNerney.
Thank you.
A wonderful presentation and a lot of good inside information about how things work and how things don't work in Washington, D.C. And well-fielded questions from the membership. And now we have one of our local favorites. In fact, he's been at this podium for a number of years. And we'd like to give an opportunity for Evan Branning, our new Livermore City Council, District 1. Overwhelming victory. Well done. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to thank Representative McNerney for coming out tonight. Really appreciate all your insight. I want to thank the club. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your help. You know, it's getting elected really is a communal effort. It's not something a single person can do. It's not something that anyone in isolation can do on their own. And so it is that community, that support, the talking to other people, having people have your back is really what makes a campaign work. And so thinking back, you know, on where I was Ron asked me to kind of give my experiences and, maybe advice or something. I don't really have advice, and so I'm not going to go there. But I want to talk a little bit about anyone who is thinking of campaigning or has campaigned or has been there, and kind of my takeaway from it that I think is the most important thing in my opinion, which is when you're campaigning, there's an incredible amount of pressure. There are expectations that are put on you from yourself, from your family, from your friends, from outsiders, from IEs, PACs, money people. Everyone has an idea, and they plant a message in your mind that this is the most important thing, that your winning or losing is what matters. And the easiest thing to happen when you're doing that is to lose yourself in the campaign, to focus on how do I raise more money, how do I knock more doors, how do I get more volunteers, and you start to become your campaign. And I think that's a dangerous thing in politics. I think that's a dangerous thing in our lives. So if you're thinking of running, if you ran, win or lose, if you're going to be up at some point in any campaign, I suppose advice I'd give, but really what worked for me is I made sure that I was myself through the campaign, that I stayed true to myself. I did that in my campaign by making sure that everything was fun. I come from a background with event management. I come from a world of food and parties and things like that, that I made sure there was good food at everything I was doing. I made sure we had a focus of community. I made sure I had friends with me. I made sure that I was the center of my race, not the race was the center of me. And so, when you guys are involved, because all of you are involved, I want you to go out, and when you're working with campaigns, my request to you is go out and don't put that pressure of the winning is what matters. It's the community is what matters. The people are what matter. The purpose is what matters. At the end of the day, the one thing you cannot control in a campaign is whether you win or lose. That is going to be in the hands of the voters. You can influence them, you can reach them, but at the end of the day, whether it's 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people voting for you, that's going to be their personal, private choice. And so everything you do may or may not move that. But what you want to do at the end is be able to say, I did something I'm proud of. I had experiences I wouldn't have had before. I maybe made a few people's lives a little bit brighter along the way. I maybe got some people interested in politics who weren't thinking about it. I got some people to vote, some young people who are stepping up now. I got, friends and family really coming together and making new acquaintances, new connections. And then, once you're there, whether you win or lose doesn't matter. What you do in your campaign is a part of moving the political message, is a part of moving your agenda about improving your community. And so my reflections, if you want, from me on what I'm most proud of in my campaign, what was the big moments for me, winning wasn't the thing that changed my life or moved me. It was the friends I made, the people I talked to, it was all of the things that happened along the campaign that have changed who I am and have improved my life. The winning was just a byproduct of everything else. And so I want to thank all of you. I've gotten closer relationships with many of you from this campaign. I talked to many of you along the way very often. Many of you volunteered and helped me get elected. I'm hoping you will stay part of my life. I'm hoping that you will still be there when it's not the pressure and glamour and public facing stuff that a campaign has. And it is the challenging parts of, we only have a limited number of resources, and we need to choose where to focus those resources. What benefits us? What brings the community out? What brings us together? And I want you to still be there for that when I'm doing that. And so my ask for you is to continue to be part of my life, to continue to reach out, to continue to advise me. I have never thought I'm the smartest person in the room. I think that we're all better when we share ideas, when I can get input from people and we can come together. So that's really all I had to say. I suppose if people have questions, I'll stay up here, but I just really want to thank you and use my time to say I appreciate all of you. I appreciate everything you've done for me, and I look forward to us having a long and healthy relationship. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
So, what was the most difficult part of the campaign for you?
So the most difficult part of the campaign, so I work full-time, I'm campaigning full-time, and I think the biggest challenge is also relationships. It was stressful. It was straining of my personal relationships, the relationships with my partner, the relationships with my friends. A lot of those started to kind of get moved to the side while, work and campaign was taking up 16 hours a day between them. And it was hard to work to make sure to maintain those along the way. And I was able to. I don't think I lost anyone in my life along the way, but there were, fights. There were, challenges with just maintaining that. And I think that, if I ever do this again, trying to find a better balance of occasionally you need to step away from the campaign and have a Saturday where you don't make phone calls or canvass. Too many Saturdays doing that is a problem, but you need some to really work to keep everything else together.
Okay.
Would you agree? I mean, you've been...
For me, it was a little different. I couldn't imagine doing working and relationship and politic all at once. So I chose mine at a different time of life where I didn't have the conflicts that you're describing. But
Good.
yes, I understand, and it's consuming.
It is very
Congratulations.
consuming. Thank you, and congratulations to you as well. Any other questions while I'm up here? All right, take it away, Ron. Thank you.
That was wonderful. A pretty unselfish politician who gave a lot of time and effort and his own resources to other candidates in the area. And that's outstanding. Something that strikes me close to my heart. And as a teacher and another teacher there, that really had an impact on me. Okay. And we are lucky enough to have another wonderful city council person with us today, who we also endorsed when she came and asked for our endorsement here just a few months ago. So I'd like to bring to the podium here our friend and a successful, wonderful candidate, Julie Testa, new city council, locally.
Thank you. And I actually just won re-election, so, but I did, my first campaign was also here, And I was having a discussion with Sarah earlier about that. And so I kind of would like to share some of what Sarah and I shared. And like Evan, I've never entered any of my races with winning as my goal, and I've always said re-election does not motivate me. I've worked hard to make everything that I do independent of being re-elected or winning, because I also want to be true to myself and support the goals that I think are in the best interests of my community, not in my interests of re-election. But the first time I ran, in fact, Jerry, I think that some of your story was resonating. Our mayor, who was a very good man, a very nice guy, but he was running unopposed because he was known to be unbeatable. And I felt that if he ran unopposed, he wouldn't have the opportunity to hear from the community, which I believed he needed to hear. So I ran as a messaging campaign, knowing that there was no chance of winning, and my goal was not to become an elected. It really truly was to have discussion and have that, have him hear from our community, because I felt like he had lost touch and wasn't hearing the voices. So when I did not win that one, I wasn't overly disappointed. In fact, I wasn't at all disappointed, but some of my supporters were. And so from that, I was sharing with Sarah that my motto was, not winning is not losing, because I accomplished everything I intended to in that campaign. Because at the end of that time, our mayor, who was a good man, said he was not happy with me, that I challenged him just because he was gonna have to stand out at the farmer's market and instead of taking the season off. But at the end, he said to me, you were right, Julie. I needed to hear from the community, and it made some significant changes. And so, Sarah, not winning is not losing. And also, I never was motivated, or it wasn't on my bucket list to become an elected official, but after that, many of my supporters who were more invested than I was at the time, someone had said to me once that they felt when they lost a campaign that they had let their supporters down. And my response was, if you use it as an investment in what you do next, you haven't let anyone down. So again, Sarah, it's an investment. And so I absolutely love the connection with community during a campaign. That's the good stuff. But it's hard a lot also. You're a target. People are allowed to say things that are mean or untrue, and or just out of context maybe, and that can be hurtful. So if you can't put on your big girl pants, you shouldn't be doing it. And so it is hard at times. And Evan, we almost all have a starter campaign that we don't necessarily win. You got to win on your first one, so yay for Evan. And so on this one, it was a re-election, and I've had 4 years where everyone always asks, do you like it? Do you like what you're doing? It's so much more work than, Evan, the work is just starting. Campaigns are all consuming, but the work is just starting. It's a lot of work. And that's why we get paid the big bucks, right, Evan?
Yeah.
We don't get paid. Or very little, a stipend. But it's wonderful. It is, I feel like in 4 years, I have some favorite accomplishments. my favorite, I wanted to share. My background before doing any of this, I'm a lifelong advocate for mental health services.
Here.
And I was very invested before becoming an elected. And so one of my greatest pride, most prideful accomplishment is that we in Pleasanton will now have a alternative response program where our loved ones in crisis will have, instead of a law enforcement response, we will have this alternative response team that will consist of clinicians, and they will treat our loved ones in crisis with the medical response that they deserve and a level of compassion. And
Yeah, mental health response, not police on the first time.
many communities, of course, are doing this, but I can genuinely say that if I had not been elected to the city council, Pleasantons wouldn't have moved along in the way that it has. And so I'm very proud that it will be a win-win. Our police will be better served with the support that they need in crisis situations. Our families will be better served, and our loved ones will be better served. So there are other big issues, our water, our PFAS. We need to make sure that our community, that we have reliable, plentiful, and clean, safe drinking water. So we need all the help with funding that we can possibly get, because we're talking money that we don't have. And so we're gonna be looking for all those federal and state grants and help to take care of this problem that our citizens didn't create, but we have to find a way to resolve. Real quick, the only other thing I wanna, since I think it was mentioned in both prior speakers, campaign finance. At the local level, it's so small in comparison. I just cannot even imagine having to raise the kind of money that is needed at a state or federal level. It shouldn't be like that, because that is the part that sends things in the wrong direction. And you absolutely right. You know, you have somebody who's donated money, they've bought influence, no matter how well-intended we are. And that's gotta change. I see it. I used to be really rose-colored glasses, and what I've seen in a lot of the time that I've spent in Sacramento has been really disheartening. So what I want to say is, I run my campaigns on very little money. And rather than spending money on a bunch of mailers and expensive things, I and my volunteers go door to door, and we use our people power, our volunteers. I spend a lot of time with my good friends standing on a street corner, holding my sign and waving because it's free. Thank you very much. It was so much fun, Sharon and Ellis, to have you guys on a Pleasanton street corner with us. And there are a lot of ways that you can get involved in your community during a campaign. It gives you more connection, and it costs less to have that people to people. I will say that I'm very proud. The results of this election cycle has proven that in Pleasanton, money does not buy a win, because those of us who spent the least won significantly. And I'm proud that my community can see beyond the multiple flyers, and by the way, that's just, you know, not the best for our environment anyway. All of that stuff just becomes trash. And so we need to find ways and be creative in not feeling the pressure to raise money and spend money. And I turned away a lot of money. I turned away a lot of donations. I turned away big donations. And when I've reached the point where I feel like what I need has been covered, I don't accept donations any longer. And I return them, and I returned a lot. And, you know, you definitely need some money to run a campaign, but they can be done in a way, certainly at a local level, not so much at the state and federal level. But anyway, so, any questions? Yes?
So I had a question. You're on the Pleasanton City Council, and so you've seen that thing with where you guys got.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry. So Pleasanton, relatively recently, I can't remember if it was the last couple of months, but I think within the last year, got sued over putting in affordable housing. I just wanted to know what your take was on that.
I heard affordable housing, I didn't hear the whole question, so I'm sure this is gonna be a question that I'm gonna enjoy, so go ahead.
Could you come up to the front and
Okay.
repeat your question? That'd be great.
I'm just.
Good question, we'd like to
I
hear
like it
it.
back there.
Yeah.
So simple question is relatively recently, and I think within, at least speaking within the last year, I think, Pleasanton, I think, got sued over affordable housing, or at least not meeting its affordable housing goals. And I was wondering if you could give us your take on that.
I am so, how much time do we have? I am so glad you asked that question,
Good.
because, you know, Pleasanton, we have 480 cities in California. Do you know how many cities met their affordable housing goals?
It's not as much as they should.
29 out of 480. 29. And you know why those 29 were able to meet those goals? Because they had such small goals, like 10. Oh, okay, we're gonna build 10. We did that. 3. Oh, we built 3. 2,000, 3,500, not so easy. And so, Pleasanton has actually, we get slammed, and man, when I walked around, I can't believe I don't have my clipboard with me, because every door I knocked on and every hand I shook, I had my clipboard and I could have pulled out and showed you the graph of how Pleasanton has done a better job of building affordable housing than most other cities in Alameda County. There's only 3 that did a better job of hitting.
She was on TV the other day, and she was talking about Nancy Pelosi, and Nancy Pelosi coaching her. And what she said was, Nancy always told me, remember your whys. Why are you here? Nancy Pelosi is here for her children, my grandchildren, yours. And we'll miss Nancy at the helm. I remember being at Eric Swalwell's Millennium Forum at the convention, at the California Democratic Convention, and we had a room about half the size of this room, and he was running the meeting in the front, and there was a doorway in the back of the front of the room, and I saw this little girl come in the door, and I recognized her as Bella, and I knew that right behind her was Nancy Pelosi, and I was the first one that stood up and applauded, and people were kind of, what's he doing? And then the door opened, and the entire room stood up. And if we've ever had a rough equivalent to the Queen of England, it's Nancy. Except she earned it, she wasn't born into it. And the majesty that she brings into the room, her presence, it was almost magical and something that I'll remember. And she'll be there for the next 2 years, coaching, Hakeem Jeffries and the rest of the leadership. But, and maybe she'll get another chance to go. Thank you.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Okay, so we have nominations. Every even year in November, we present nominations for the officers of the club. And so we've had a committee that we formed last month. That's Ellis, John, Rowe, and I. And we've sent out requests for people to make nominations for the 4 officers' positions. Those would be president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. And so far, what we have are, we've had nominations for myself, Ron, for president, Richard Lee for vice president, who's also currently serving, and Alan, who's currently serving as treasurer, and all 3 of us have volunteered to serve if elected. Ellis, do you have any other names that you have in mind?
Well, I spoke to somebody about being treasurer, not treasurer, secretary,
Secretary.
and they are considering it. And what I said to them was that it used to be the secretary just had to take notes at the meeting.
Okay.
But now it's become the newsletter and the website, and I'd be willing to take part of that
Okay.
if they're willing to be secretary. But for now, if nobody else stands up and asks to be nominated for secretary, I'm raising my hand. I'll take on responsibility and find people to work with me with 3 responsibilities. Take the notes, run the website, get out the newsletter.
Okay.
And send out the flyers.
And then we have
That's the
some
newsletter.
flyers that announce various events, including our meetings. Okay, so at this point, we also open the floor to additional nominations from anybody who's here. Do we have anybody who either wants to volunteer themselves or has anybody that they would recommend for any of these positions? Richard?
Sorry, I had a procedural question. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe our bylaws say that we need to notify membership 5 days in advance of a meeting if we were to nominate for club official positions. I just want to clarify if that's true. And if
Yeah,
that-
we did notify them.
We did, okay.
I called up the bottom third of the roster. Ron and John Rowe sent emails to everybody else. And then, of course, we're not voting until January.
Right,
So we have until January to take nominations.
okay.
So the 5-day rule probably doesn't apply. This is just for nominations. It's not for, we're not gonna vote on any officers tonight.
Okay.
No, that sounds good. Yeah, that's appropriate. Okay, no nominations from the floor? Okay. We have a report from Jackie Terran Rankle, who is our past secretary and is also our AC-DEMS representative. And she sent a written report. She's sorry that she couldn't be here tonight. But she says that she would like me to read this, and that's concerning the Assembly District elections. The California Democratic Party Assembly District elections meeting, the ADEM meeting, shall be held in each of the 80 assembly districts in January of each odd-numbered year in order to elect representatives as Assembly District Delegates, or ADDs. So this is an available position in the county of Alameda for Assembly District delegates. And the balloting is open and the nominations are open. If you're interested in holding this position, okay, there is a time period from November 9th at 12 p.m. to December 9th at 12 p.m. The registration forms are open and they're available online that you can sign up to nominate yourself or someone else at this particular website, ADEM elections.com. Okay, so this again is to the California Democratic Party Assembly District delegates. Okay, all 80 assembly districts will have delegates, and you serve the Democratic State Central Committee, and there is one representative per assembly district. Okay, any questions about that?
Ron, could I clarify that, please?
Sure, go ahead.
There are about 3,000 delegates to the California Democratic Party Convention. 1,000 of them are elected, and that's what Ron's talking about. And what's really going on is that it's 6 or 7 per assembly district, where 3 males and 3 females are elected, except they don't call them that. They call them females and not females. Some cockamamie thing like that. Anyway, that's 1/3 of the delegates. 1/3 of the delegates are the people who are elected to the central committees in each county. Another 1/3 of the delegates are people appointed by congressmen, assembly members, state senators, and statewide officers. So they get a certain number, like I know Mark DeSaulnier a few years ago got 5 delegates to the convention that they named, in addition to Mark DeSaulnier being the delegate. So if you're interested in being an elected delegate, you put your name in the hat. For each assembly district, they have an election. It used to be, it was very difficult to get very easy to get elected. I remember one year that Greg and I were elected, we got the most votes, and I got like 64 votes. Nowadays, the last few elections, it took like 1,000 votes to get elected. And the difference between what used to go on and what's going on now is that with this coming election, and I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be, you can go in and cast your ballot and leave. You're able to cast ballots for multiple candidates because, as I said, there's 6 or 7 per assembly district. I'm not sure how they allocate at 6 or 7, and the ones with the most votes get the seat. It seems to me a couple of years ago, we had north of 100 candidates. And it turns out to be, you just had to show up, make a little speech and convince the people there that you were a good candidate and you'd get elected. Nowadays, it costs a few $100s for a mailer. And they typically have slate cards and things like that. I hate to say this, but it's become very politicized. And it can be quite expensive becoming a delegate. Aside from getting elected, Shannon and I were delegates for several years, and it would typically cost us $1,000 to $2,000 a year to go to the conventions, hotels, meals, travel, all of that stuff.
But it was fun.
Okay, but it was fun, right. So, anyway, that's what's really going on.
Yeah, that's a good framework.
We were at the
for
same
it.
meeting Jackie was at. I didn't fake this.
Yeah, that's a good framework for it. So if you wanted to register as a candidate, the site again is ademelections.com. So you can get your registration form and register as a candidate for one of those positions for this district, and then there'll be the election process. But it is fun to go to the California State Convention.
It has
And to
been.
do that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Okay, good. Now, we are not gonna have a regular meeting next month because instead we have our holiday meeting, our celebration. And Sharon, did you want to tell us a little bit about what we've come up with so far for
Okay.
our December meeting, which is our holiday meeting?
Yes. Our holiday party is Saturday, December 17th. It's from 2 to 4. It's right here. And what I'm thinking is it's going to be a dessert party. And depending on COVID and stuff, I might ask everybody to bring desserts, make it fun. And we will be sending out a flyer, and I will be asking for, RSVPs and stuff like that. And if anybody wants to have any more suggestions, it's still in the planning stage.
We've invited a lot of elected officials,
Yeah, we will.
and we still will invite additional ones based upon who won the election. But we
Yeah.
sent out a kind of save the date thing 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Right, so this is a wonderful celebration, a wonderful party. We've had, statewide officers here, Lainey Kuniakis speaks regularly, Fiona Ma, we've had Eric here. This is a yearly tradition, and I can remember many times where we have all of the tables laid out, and well over 100 people having wonderful desserts and having fun and singing Jewish and Christian songs and the whole thing. It's the fun party to celebrate a good year together. Okay. That sounds good, Sharon, and we'll have a little bit more details. But December 17th in the afternoon here.
Right here,
For
2
a
to 4.
dessert party sounds great. Okay. Do we have any business or questions or suggestions from the floor before we make our adjournment? Alan, do we have a committee report for the treasurer?
First off, it's that time again where it's time for renewal or paying your dues for next
yeah.
year. And whoever is doing the bulletin, if we could just put something in there, that it's time for dues for next year. This month, we had very little expenses. We had a fee on the square of $20. We had a donation clear that we had authorized for $250. I believe that was for the San Ramon School Board election. P.O. Box was $129, and last check cleared on the picnic of $157.28, which leaves us a balance of $2,105.05.
Good. All right, and do we have a total on the membership at this point?
It's still the same, which is 122.
122, that's pretty darn good. That's impressive. Okay, very good. Thank you, Alan Abashir. Do we have any additional business?
Can I comment on the number of club members? This year, in June, whoever's president will have to submit the club roster to the central committee and to the state party. And based upon how many members we have, I believe in the assembly district, we will be allocated seats on the pre-primary endorsement caucus. That will determine who the party will endorse in our districts. In most years, it doesn't make any difference. Every once in a while, it makes all the difference in the world. And we've had that when Rebecca Bauer-Cahan first ran. She wound up getting our endorsement at the end of February, and it gave her 4 extra months to run against Catherine Baker, which is one of the reasons that she won. And a real squeaker, those 4.5 months gave her a really good edge that she wouldn't have had if she had to continue to run against another Democrat in the primary. So we'd like to build up the membership going into the year so that by the time we hit June, if we have 120 members, that could get us 6 seats on the pre-primary endorsement caucus. The last time I remember, there were about 90 seats. So 6 seats can make a big difference.
Wonderful. Alan, can you tell us the ways in which we can renew our membership? Because coming up in January 1, all of our memberships are due.
Right, well, the best way is just to do it online, you know, with a link on the website or on the bulletin we send it out. Or the other way, bring a check at the next meeting or mail it in.
Okay,
And dues are staying the same, which is $35 for a household, $25 for an individual, and $15 for a senior.
right.
Pretty reasonable.
Quite reasonable, yes, very good. And you'll be here at the holiday party, you'll be
Yes.
able to accept checks, and if people
I
want
can even
to
take credit cards if needed too.
take credit cards, we can take cash. If you wanted to cover it at the holiday party on December 17th, we can
Or
do that.
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Are you taking gold doubloons still?
Maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, but no rupees. Okay, any additional comments, suggestions, business that we need to take care of? All right.
Thank the IBEW.
Thank
Yes.
you again
Yes.
to Greg Donato, the IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 595, for presenting this opportunity and making sure that we have the equipment, the warmth, and all the wonderful hospitality that's provided, including that good coffee, keeping me up here at the podium and awake. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.